Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Well, it's great to be here, and I feel privileged to be the last speaker. After so many great speakers have actually given you most of the solutions, and I could reference all of them, and really, actually, all I'd be really doing is confirming what I'm about to say. I've worked with Muslim Aid. I've actually trained 2 CEOs through the Permaculture Design Certificate course, previous CEO Iman and Sheikh Hassan. And it's been quite a long journey working with Muslim Aid on quite a few projects. And we're particularly thankful of the support we've gained in Jordan, where we have an ongoing project in a very difficult situation. An old refugee site village in the Dead Sea Valley. I kind of like a challenge. I like difficult situations, and I like to try and turn something around from a disaster and a catastrophe into something good. And I think anything's designable. We can end up in absolute abundance. And we have a saying in permaculture that the problem is the solution. And so you can turn the problem into the solution. And I've even worked in war zones, which I wouldn't advise. It's the most tragic situation to be in. But working with Sheikh Hassan and the MAA team, I've ended up in a few places, and we travelled together through West Africa in some very difficult situations, and we looked at different projects and how to get projects off the ground, and everybody wants a sustainable solution and a smart, efficient solution, and that's absolutely admirable and extremely rare that that's actually the real intention of aid. I've seen that word sustainable in aid project proposals for over 30 years, and if it was true, if we really wanted sustainable aid, there is no reason why we can't have it. There's no reason why we can't have a sustainable world, by the way. Right? All the solutions are actually there. It's intention and cooperation. And in the Islamic world, there's some chance we've got that bit, the cooperation, right? I can see it here in Sydney, definitely. If we meant it for aid, aid would be now redundant. It'd be done. It'd be finished. Anyway, we've talked a lot about what we can do around Sydney and getting an institute up and getting examples up and getting education up and getting different situations. And quite a few things have come up. And my involvement's got more and more. And our institute's involvement's got more and more. So not so long ago, Sheikh Hassan approached me and said, I've got a great job. I've got a great project. We can get on the ground. We're at 5 acres of ground at least, and we can get a fantastic project going. I said, great, at last, let's go. Okay. I said, what is it? He says, it's a cemetery. A cemetery, okay. This is not what I'm expecting, right? Yeah. This is where people get buried, right? Yeah. This is where we all end up. I'm about life, right? And abundance, right? Okay, the problem's the solution, and I like a challenge. And I've got one in a way that I not think I'm going to get this, right? I know. That hadn't actually crossed my mind that I was going to... And I had to ask my sheikh about, is this going to be all right? And I'm like, whoa, okay. I often notice that there seems to be a sense of humour out there in the greater knowledge. And I'm thinking this is kind of funny, but let's take it serious. So in the end, it actually does happen, and I get sent the details, and it's pre-approved, and as a green cemetery. It's been purchased with development approval in place. So and I'm used to this a little bit, but it's got massive information criteria that go with the approval. A lot of information. Attachment after attachment comes in, and there's a lot of reading. But somehow it fits. Somehow we can work with it. We're in the overregulated world, especially when it comes to ecology, environments, native species, and all these things. And I need to tell you this little bit of a story because I'm saying, what are we going to do? I'm like, you know, how does this work? And I don't know exactly how this cemetery business works. I have to get a bit of education about it. Right? So one of the criteria is that the outside buffer zone of the boundary, which is quite a largish property, has to have a 3 metre by 1 metre earth mound put around and planted to native species of the local Cumberland woodland. And there's a whole criteria of exactly how that has to be done. It's all laid out. It's done. It's okay. That's part of the DA approval. And I said, well, which bit do we do? They said, well, we want you to have, or we want permaculture to design, we want your involvement in designing 12 metres on top of that, making a total of 15 metres, and 20 metres, 18 metres on the front gate, on the front of the property. So 20 metres along the front, 15 metres along the side, 15 metres along the back, 15 metres along the other side. 3 metres is already decided. What do I do with the rest? They said, you do what you think's great. You do what you think's good. What will work with it? What will food forest? A diverse, productive, natural ecosystem of food. What else can we do? Well, we can educate. We can educate. We can educate people to put it in. That works okay. Yeah, that works okay. So we can do an education system with it. People can work on it. I started to work on this design, and there it is. There's the property. And the first thing I did was I had to just relax with what we're doing for a second and work within the parameters of the boundary of my brief. That's what I have to do as a consultant. So this is one of the many, many, many maps that I've got, but this is a boundary map. And I started to work with the natural patterns. We've learned a little bit about patterns. We work a lot with the patterns of creation, the patterns of form, and the patterns of shape of landscape. So I started to work around, one, we've got a 3 metre boundary around the outside, and two, we've got natural contours. So I started to work from the one metre on the outside in to the edge. And I'm literally playing with design now. And as I start to space it out, I come up with a lovely natural pattern that actually works with the boundary and works with the contours. And it will work as a natural, soft water rehydrating system. It will reduce the need for irrigation. Not totally eliminate it initially, but reduce it. So then I outline here where the darker brown is where the 3 metres by 1 metre earth mound of native species is, and the lighter brown is coming in on contour. And then I start to look at the water flows as well that go through the site, and there's all sorts of criteria about what you can and can't do with those. And then I start to place in what would the native species look like as they develop around the outside of the site. Now what you're looking at there would be the native species. They're already decided. And it's a little bit to get there as well. There's weed removal and there's other things that have to be involved, and there's part of the development, but it has to fit in with all that, and it will. And then I start to look at actually just cover cropping and repairing with plant systems the area between those mounds. And this is a process that we would do in design to actually bring a landscape back to fertility. And then the next stage is to plant those mounds, and I would plant it with a very, very nice diversity of species, productive and what we call supportive. A lot of them will be native, some will be non-native, and of course the fruit trees won't necessarily be native, but it's actually a natural functioning ecology of productive species mixed with support species. That's how we would term it in a permaculture design sense. So we now have a system that's stable. On the outside, a very nice looking, harmonic, natural edge landscape. We've met the criteria of the environmental guidelines, plus we've put in something that's very nice and expressive. Now, then, I look at the natural water flows and I start to plant the natural water flows to stabilise those with native species just so they stay nice and stable. And where they leave the site, I've placed in rock gabions and natural soakage systems so that any water leaving this site is absolutely clean, it's nicely stable, there's no erosion, there's no runoff. That's a standard system and it's required in the development approval. Then the interspace. Now this is where the interesting bit comes. We've got 12,000 sites. More or less, we've got 12,000 trees in the interspace here. In these beautiful harmonic areas, there are roughly one burial site per tree of choice. So if you want to purchase a site, you have a choice of a tree that can be planted and maintained. You could actually have it before you use the site. You could be involved in the planning if you like. You could be involved in the education of how this site becomes a living example beyond your time. We know we get baraka for trees. We know we get credits for trees that we plant after we die. Especially if any living element gets benefit from it. But if it's a fruit tree, if it's a productive tree, and if it educates other people to do the same, you get increased credits. This becomes now a living site of ongoing credits. Now, we can now fill those spaces in over time. It becomes of value over time as an educational process. This, I'm told that Sydney has a requirement for 1,200 burial sites a year, and that's guaranteed. Right? It's inevitable. Right? As Muslims, we seem to be very comfortable with understanding that. Right? So, as it fills from one end, from the front to the back, more or less. There's areas towards the back of the site that will not be used for 10 years, even if most of the burials in Sydney come to this site, and there will probably be other sites. I'm told Sydney runs out of sites within a year or so. So, there's an opportunity here to set up a demonstration of how we educate people. Can be brothers and sisters in the movement, or other people, if they're other people outside the Muslim culture. And we can set up an education centre. We can set up a commercial kitchen. We can set up a nursery for the site. We can set up a garden at the back of the site. We can set up a lot of the ideas you came up with was, we need to get together as a community. We need a community garden. We need to understand solar power. We need to understand compost toilets, waterless toilets, reed bed grey water systems, energy efficient building. We need to understand a lot of these things that make us more sustainable. It's not just growing things, it's a whole mixture of things. Now, it's hard to get on land in Sydney, and it's hard to get on land now and educate people so they can prove they could do community gardens and extend these systems further. Here's an opportunity that's actually right in front of us. Now, how can we build something there and in 10 years' time take it down? It just so happens that we have another system that we've got going, and it's happening right now with Muslim aid. We've worked on aid in a lot of places, and we find it really hard to put long-term sustainable projects down where we don't have land tenure, where we don't own the land, where we can't stay on the land. Hidden agendas get in the way. So we've now started to secure land, and once we secure land, what we want to do is we want to get on the ground as quickly as possible, because we have some reasons for that. There are some serious issues coming very fast. We need to put projects down fast, and one of the things that gets blown out on time and budget is infrastructure. Anybody that's built a house will share that with you. If you build a house, it always goes over time and over budget. And to try and describe permaculture as this holistic, multidisciplined, connective design science, it's not easy to get people to fund it in the aid world, because it's not like a water well. You can buy a water well for $10,000. Ka-jing, I'll buy one, thanks. What you do with the water, or whether it's salty water, or whether you have it, all right. But this is a complicated thing. So making the infrastructure hit the ground fast is a real advantage. If you can sell it in a box and unpack it, put it together, and start gardening, start running on solar power, start giving examples of sustainable waste systems quickly. If it comes with a kitchen that you unpack, if it comes with a classroom you unpack, if it comes with a water tank and guttering and everything else you need to show these examples, it doesn't matter if the building's not perfect. The building can be designed to be quite good. And so I came up with an idea that I trialled. Like, we have to trial good ideas to see if they work. So we trialled shipping container buildings, where we design them to be actually pre-constructed and packed with all the materials to make a project, and you literally unpack it. And if you want to move it later, you can actually unbolt it and take it away. It fits on a truck, it arrives on a truck, it arrives on a ship. It just happens to be, at this point in history, a really ideal thing to move across the planet. And we can deliver it in 50 days. Onto your, in 50 days, it'll hit your country. And within 10 days, hopefully, it's through customs and on site. All you need is 4 concrete footings per container. They're structurally extremely strong things, and they can be designed for the tropics. We've designed them now for Vanuatu. First office in Villa, first school for 120 children in Tanna Island, next to the mosque on the island. We have the land. And one of my students has just recently been there with Tawfiq from the MAA office to do the initial siting. And we've designed it for the tropics. It's a different design to this climate, and it would be a different design to the desert, hot deserts, and it would be a different design to cold climate. But we've actually trialled this, and we trialled it in such a way that we even use recycled plastic decking that's like imitation wood, doesn't need painting, doesn't need preserving, white ants don't eat it. There's nothing in these buildings that deteriorate. So there's an architectural plan of the institute that we already have in place and running at Zaytuna Farm in northern New South Wales. And it's operating, it's been up for nearly a year. And it is, for the same size building, it's 1/5 the cost of building a Besser block building. And definitely gets there, you don't get that up in 50 days. So that's the plan. This is the side elevations. That's the other side with a commercial kitchen in place. That's the classroom. That's the open space. There are different designs for different climates, I must emphasize, because a tropical climate has a very, very high roof, like a Polynesian roof with overhanging eaves, and it catches the wind, it blows through, you're orientated to the trade wind, and you have an upstairs floor as well in the tropics. That's the decking. And we've learnt a lot, by the way. We've learnt some materials we need to improve a bit. We've learnt about some things about getting these things shipped in a way that where we, you know, the elements we include that will be a little bit more practical. So we've taken the research section out of it by trialling it ourselves. That's a commercial kitchen on the right. That's a student common room on the left. And this is 6 compost toilets and 6 showers, totally waterless, totally biologically clean grey water with reed beds, all set up and running. And I'm told from some of the top sheikhs that if you biologically clean grey water using only living elements, it's not najaz, but we're not going to drink it anyway. We're going to put it on irrigation. We're going to use it for irrigation on trees and other growing elements. That's just a front and back view, side view, and what it looks like in reality, up and running and trialled. Now, just imagine what that looks like in place with the education centre, on the cemetery, with fruit trees being planted. Now, if people come along and they see it and they say, that works, we'll fund the extension of that. And you support the cemetery in relation to that. How much extension of baraka do you get now? How much extension of credit do you get now? Because these institutes are going to hit the ground where people are suffering. You can put one of these straight into a Syrian refugee camp right now. We would design it slightly different for that climate, but the principle's the same. And put it in and say, look, here is an example of how we can help ourselves quick. It's on the ground. Wherever people are in need in aid, we can be there fast, have it up, have it teaching, have these examples. Later on, you can take it away if you want and build your mud brick house or your whatever straw bale house or whatever's perfect. But right now, we don't need to be perfect when you get on the ground where people are suffering. There's more people suffering every day. So, as this developed in my mind, what was a problem turned into a wonderful solution. And it's been a great pleasure sharing it with you. And I hope that it becomes an absolute reality, inshallah. All right, thank you.